Hello, all my lovely ladies, men, gentlemen, non binaries, transgendered, two spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, if I didn't already say that, pansexual, demisexual, all the people out there, my bears, my otters, my cubs. I'll see you in San Francisco for Folsom Street Fair. I hope. Welcome to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast today. I've got Meagan O'Nan. Hopefully I said your last name right. And or is it Onan or Onan?
Onan, but Onan, whatever, I'm open.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Megan is open, y'all. So I have her with me today. What are your pronouns?
She and her.
Okay, she and her, and everyone knows I'm whatever the fuck you want to call me. Whatever I'm feeling at that moment in time is what you need to say. It's a she's an author, the storytelling and speaker coach. That's one I never heard before. And a keynote speaker. How you doing today, girl?
I'm good. You're making me smile and making me happy. I've been editing a TEDx talk all morning, so I'm like, I need some relief here. I need some interaction. So
We're
happy to be
gonna
here.
we're gonna interact the fuck out of each other today. So you're a woman who identifies as gay, part of the non-straight world. You're a woman
Right.
of power, you have influence, you stand up tall and you speak what you have to say. And it's interesting because a major thing that I found when I was researching you is that you're saying you're not actually trying to like change people's minds, with a lot of the work that you're doing and everything like that.
Yeah.
You're using your vulnerability, to educate and affect change in a directly but yet indirectly. And so
Right.
so in this show, we're going to talk a lot about your coming out stories. You came out when you were young, then so there's some time, and then you get outed when you're in college, and we all know how rude that is, for that to happen to people, in the mix of all this, you know, you're struggling back and forth with like your family, what they think, and your society, and everything like that. And
Yeah.
and I found so many things from within the reading that I really wanted to pick apart so that you can help me understand because
Okay.
I don't have a coming out story because I didn't. So as we were discussing before I mashed that record button, you know, we both have like chaotic families. I detached from mine. And then I went to the military when I was 17. So by the time that I decided, I mean, I always was not straight, but before it would matter, I had a government salary and everything like that, and the older I got, the less of a fuck I gave about what the fuck my
Yeah.
family thought.
Yeah.
But I know that this is not the case for everyone. And so during this interview, I hope that you can help me understand why people put so much stock in their family. So we are going to be talking about this new book that you have coming out called Held and Free. That's gonna form the core information where I'm gonna be pulling from. So what would you like to tell us about you, like your history, your life, favorite color, whatever?
My favorite color is blue. No, I was raised in Mississippi, in Starkville, Mississippi, which is where Mississippi State University is, and I was raised Catholic.
Ugh.
And being Catholic actually here in Starkville was the weird thing because you're supposed to be Baptist in Mississippi. And so I already grew up in a way that I always felt a little bit different anyway. And then I never felt like I really fit into the Catholic Church because I didn't understand why women couldn't be in leadership. And I had a hard time understanding this concept of not being worthy of God's love. And so I was always questioning things and going to my mom and saying like, I don't understand this. And she really didn't have good answers for me because she was just, going along the path that had been set before her as well. And so I was always this curious kid. I was the one that my parents, they just weren't sure what to do with me really. And I grew up as an athlete and then eventually realized during my college tenure that I was gay. Actually, I didn't know as a young child. I knew looking back, like I had crushes on women and like it was all there. I just didn't have context for it because I wasn't around people who were openly gay and I had never been around that in my family. And so there was no context for me to know that I could be that. And so when I got to college, obviously that changed, and I really found myself. And then I was outed by the Fellowship of Christian Athletes community at Mississippi State, and kind of had this whole tumultuous journey of my spiritual community disowning me. And then at the same time, going through this really tough time with my family of them trying to understand, like who I was and who I'd been and trying to make all that work. So it was a really difficult process for everyone, especially me, where I just felt alone. I didn't feel like I had anyone to just like hold my hand and walk me through that process. And so I ended up leaving Mississippi for a long time. And I just needed to find myself. I needed to get outside of the pressure of being here in society and culture here. And this was in 2005 when I left. And then I was gone for 6 years before I decided to come back. And the reason I came back was because I felt like I wanted to make a difference initially. That's kind of what drove me back. And then once I got here, I realized, oh wait, no, I don't love myself. I need to be able to stand in my truth and figure out who I am and be okay with who I am. And so it's been this journey the last 12 years. I'm still in Mississippi, married and have a 3-year-old now, but the journey has really been about like being okay with me and getting to this place of wholeness and building this foundation of wholeness for me spiritually and as a person. And so it's just been like this kind of voyage and return journey and just this whole self-discovery process for me and just really trying to love myself and be okay with it.
Well, as Mama RuPaul would say, girl, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell you gonna love anybody else?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100% agree.
God bless you for coming back to Missy fucking 50. I was stationed out there when I was in the Air Force at Keesler Air Force Base. That is one backwards ass, or they say bass backwards state. Even I'm right over here in Louisiana. It's not like there's that much fucking difference.
Right.
Yeah, no. So, but everyone knows I'm headed back out to Los Angeles. I just need to get really rich first so that a bitch can maintain her lifestyle. So now this book, Held and Free, is going to be your third book. Now your
Right.
site, meaganonan.com, which of course will go in the showy notes. I suggest everyone to check it out. She looks really cute on all her videos and everything. And girl, I love your hair. That
Oh, well, thank you.
yeah. And so the first book is called Creating Your Heaven on Earth, Unveiling the Truth That Was Always There. And the second one is called Courage, Agreeing that Disagree is Not Enough. That sounds like the theme for the resistance.
Oh, man. Yeah,
Hey,
there's a story behind each one. So,
give us just a quick little, minute about each of those books, just a little.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of the backstory is why they were created too. And, when I wrote that first one, Creating Your Heaven on Earth, I was in a really bad emotionally abusive relationship. And I would spend my evenings down in my basement writing that book. And to me, it felt like a calling forth. Like I knew a good life was possible and I knew I could be happy. But it was like my way of just writing myself out of that relationship and moving on because it got published, it got picked up pretty quickly, and after it got picked up, my girlfriend at the time got really upset with the success, and so it was kinda like this messed up dynamic, but it's what propelled me into leaving the relationship, and then, propelled me forward into my career. So, it was kinda like this thing that gave me the opportunity to move on. So it was much more than it's what I knew deep down. So the creating your heaven on earth is about like concepts and beliefs that I believe are true spiritually. So and then courage, agreeing to disagree is not enough. That one was published in 2014. I think we all can remember what was going on in 2014, 2015 around. gay marriage becoming legal and just the whole discussion of equal rights and for LGBTQ plus people. And I was just really tired of the, hey, let's disagree to disagree because it really doesn't get us anywhere. And I wanted to have conversations that were meaningful. And so I wrote this book from that place of just wanting deeper connection with others and trying to find a bridge between our worlds. And so this was really a calling forth of like, hey, like agreeing to disagree is not going to get us anywhere. We've got to come to the table. We've got to talk. We've got to have conversations. So, and then Held and Free will be out in January, and it's my memoir, and I'm just digging in to the whole story. You've seen some of it, so
Mhm. Thank you for that sneak peek, girl. They sent me over an advanced copy, and no, I'm a privileged bitch. Deal with it. And so, and I love me a good memoir because one thing that's really important to me, a part of this ire I take from having had been in the church. And in the church, these pastors, and I mean the word, and I say the word pastor loosely. I don't believe they're all pastors and preachers, but what the fuck else do they call themselves? They're always cranking out these books left and right and everything like that. And eventually it occurred to me that, first of all, most of these books are like regurgitated sermons. They write little mini talks.
right,
We call them sermons, and then eventually they compile them into a book and then put a different cover on it.
right,
And so, but it occurred to me that those preachers don't really write memoirs. They don't actually give you the dirty drows, then tell you the really, really nasty shit about themselves.
yeah,
And they're not really super transparent people. And so I begin to think about this. So they're like, you know what? I want more memoirs from people. I want people to, there's so many people who are speaking and coaching and everything like that.
yeah,
And then, which is great and very helpful. But for me, I want to know, who are you?
yeah,
And give me that shit. And so I'm so glad that, and I can hear that you put your personal stories in your previous two books, but I'm just going to say, I'm glad that you gave us the full memoir, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's been a battle to put. There's a lot of stories you haven't read that are become. I was very vulnerable in a lot of, especially that emotionally abusive relationship and some other stories in there that I really didn't want to put in there. And I've battled back and forth about changing it to a self-help, but I have ultimately decided that the best way for my own healing and to actually teach is to just tell the stories as they are. And I mean, that's how we learn best. I've seen it in my own work with other speakers that I work with. Like, I learn the most from hearing your stories. And I want to hear people's true and vulnerable stories as they are and how you experience them. So I totally agree with you.
See, that's how you know you got good shit in your book. Because when you're like struggling with, oh, I wonder if I should keep that in there. Am I really gonna say that? Oh, maybe I should take it out. Every time I came across that when I was writing mine, I was like, nope, I want to force myself to leave it in there just because I'm having so much toil about whether or not I should say
Exactly.
it.
Yep. Yep. And by the way, your book is excellent. I haven't finished it yet. I've gotten through the first few chapters, but whoo, what a setup. I'll tell you that.
Well, thank you for
We've been through a lot.
it's going around, honey. But but thank you very, very, very much for that compliment.
Mhm.
So one of the lines, and I'm going to be reading a few excerpts from your book because I was very impressed with them. So I want to talk about, as you stated, why you wrote it, but I thought this was so cool the way that you wrote this. Now, and a part of it, I was reading, it's talking about like your grandmother, her husband, your grandfather. One day, some bitch shows up on the step with this kid, claiming it's your grandpappy. That was apparently your grandpappy was out there slinging that dick, all over town, getting bitches pregnant. And this is how that shit goes down. But in your description of this, you were saying like your grandmother fell victim, her mindset fell victim to the circumstances.
Right.
And I thought that that was such a catch-all phrase. I really felt like you cinched it, and that happens to us in so many different scenarios, be it
Yeah.
abuse relationships. our mindsets fall victim to the circumstances.
Yeah,
Coming out in the way people react, our mindsets fall victim to the circumstances.
absolutely.
Tell me what fueled you to write this particular line.
It just writing the memoir made me think about where I came from. And I think we have to think about where we come from to know who we are. And because of her mindset and because of that generation where women were more repressed than they are now, well, I wouldn't say that anymore, but where they didn't know how to use their voices. They didn't know how to speak up for themselves. Like she was a product of her generation that the man was in charge of the household and she was to go along with whatever that was. And that's where I come from. Like I've had to learn to use my voice. My mom, for me growing up, we didn't talk about things. We didn't talk about hard things. I never knew how to articulate what I was feeling. I had learned how to write things down on my own, but it was a very lonely world that I lived in. So until I came out and started actually, owning who I was, I had to teach myself how to not fall victim to my circumstances by claiming myself and claiming my power and saying, "This is who I am," and putting myself out there and having those hard conversations. But I had to learn it on my own. I wasn't taught that at all. And so it's helped me accept and understand how I was raised and a part of me that wants to be silent. It's like that constant back and forth of like, should I speak up? you know? And then there's the other part who's like, "Yes, speak up." And so I think having that balance and knowing and being aware of who I am and where I come from has helped me go beyond that and speak up and use my voice now in a way that works for me. So to me, I mean, and I think that's all about, reflecting on your story and where you come from. I think it's just super important for anybody to go back and think about the generations before us and what they had to deal with because it's a part of who we are.
So I suppose the counter the counter intuition to letting your mindset fall victim to the circumstance would be to mind over matter.
Yeah, well, and it's also like discovering who I am, that I am not that. You know what I mean? Like I have a voice and I have things to say and it will crush me if I don't say them, you know? And I don't want to suffer. I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to have resentment like I've seen, some of these generations before have. I don't want that. I want to be happy when I die. Like I want to have joy in my life. And if I'm not out there being honest about myself and being vulnerable, then what is there? Like I just want to put it all out on the table.
Right. I agree. Like, as problematic as my family is, I always say I couldn't really learn from them how to be, but I have learned from them how not to be.
Right.
And, in your book, you were talking about how Granny was running around looking miserable and shit. And that's who you're talking about right now. You saw that bitterness in her and how it weighed her down because
It did.
she didn't feel like she could change anything. She didn't use her voice. And you're like, damn it, I'm not going to be like her.
Yeah, it really bothered me. I mean, I remember having conversations with her when I was little on like, hey, like, are you going to get over this? Are you going to move on? Are you going to be happy? And, it really irked me as a child. I mean, I saw it, but, she didn't know how to get out of it because she just she didn't have the tools.
I'm a sidestep for just a moment. This weekend, I watched on Netflix the Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey documentary that covers the Latter-day Saints debacle with the Jeffs guy, I think his name was, who had all the women and stuff under their command and control. And many of their mindsets fell victim to the circumstance. Some of them broke free, some of them have not. So keep sweet, pray, and obey. It's 4 episodes, and Netflix isn't paying me to say this, but they just have like really good fucking documentaries lately.
Yeah.
So
I'll have to check that out.
that one's all about the oppression of women. And God.
Yeah. There's still much of that going on, obviously. So
Yeah, and that's us throwing shade at you, Supreme Court, and especially Texas. Ugh. And so in the book, you say that you want to be the representation that you needed when you came out, not just for those who are like me, but also for those who want to understand people who are not like them. Break down for me how you're towing this line in between dealing with closed-minded, hard-headed people with which is how I'm going to describe them. You're saying people who are not like you, and then, and then people who are vulnerable and suffering.
Well, I mean, it kinda goes back to that what we were just talking about is just, like, being open and being a voice, being that representation and letting my community know that I'm here. You're not alone. I have a family. My wife and I are very, very out and have been for years. We have businesses. We have a little girl. The whole school knows. We go and we talk to our teachers. I'm like, we're out and open and everybody knows it. So being that representation to me is super important and just being honest about who we are. And then the other side of that is, I think it just goes back to who I am, and I've discovered this along the way of just trying to find a way to bridge that gap between myself and the people who think being gay is wrong or think gay marriage is wrong, and because I'm surrounded or have been surrounded by them in my upbringing, right? So, I had to find a way if I was gonna live in this community to be okay with them as they are, but also find a way to be myself and be okay with that too. And it's a really fine line to balance.
And look, y'all, just for perspective, Mississippi ain't like the gayest place in all the 9 realms or anything like that, so what Megan is doing is really cutting against the grain, to live that openly and that free, and as far as I know, anywhere in the state of Mississippi. Would you say that that is correct about your state?
I would say in general, it's correct. I think in Starkville, there's a major university here, and that helps a lot because there's a lot of diversity here. And so I would, besides Oxford and Starkville and maybe Jackson, I would definitely all the rural places in Mississippi, that's a different story. So, I live in a place where it's more accepted than other places in Mississippi.
Mhm. Okay. So, talk to us about when you came out when you were young, in the book, there's a very dramatic scene of you being on the couch and your mother was being really, really extra, in her own way. That was her reaction. I feel like that her reaction didn't really help the situation. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, so well, I had actually just been outed on campus too. It was all on the same day. So I had gone through all of this stuff with my spiritual community on campus already. And so I was like, I got to go tell my mom and my family before word gets around because it's a small town. And it was just a matter of time before everyone was going to know. But I wanted to tell her before anybody else did. And so when I got to her house, she was actually in the middle of losing her best friend to cancer. She was upset. She had been on the phone with her. She was already not in a good space. And we sat down on the couch, and I had a really hard time just uttering the words. I didn't know how to say it. And I was crying, I was bawling, and this is typical of our dynamic growing up was I would be an emotional wreck and wanting to say something, but not know how to say it because I wasn't really taught how to articulate what I was going through or how I was feeling. And so she's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I said, "I'm not like most girls." And she's like, "Well, what do you mean?" She was totally confused because I had dated guys up until that point. And I mean, rightfully so. And then a light bulb went off and she said, "You mean you're gay?" And I said, "Yeah." And I just started bawling again. And she just, I felt like she shut off emotionally at that point. She went into fear right away. And at the time, I didn't know that's what it was. I just felt like this woman is not happy with me. She seems disappointed, but she wasn't saying it with words. It was all body language. It was all like me trying to understand what was going on inside of her. So I was playing the guessing game and being insecure. And having had a rough day already, I was a complete wreck. And so then she calls my dad. He comes home. He sits down on the couch and says, "Don't you think you're going to go to hell?" That was the first thing out of his mouth. And I said, "No," because at that point I had been questioning my spirituality anyway. And I said, "I don't believe in hell." And then my older brother comes home and he gives me a hug and he said, "You should probably leave Mississippi." And I was like, I froze. I didn't know what to say to that. It was a very impactful thing to say to someone. And I've learned over the years that he just wanted me to be safe. And I've learned over the years that my mom was just really scared for me and how I was gonna live a life. They had no context for any of it. And then my younger brother, he I told him actually a few months before, he's the only person that knew. So his presence, he didn't really say anything. He was just there to be a presence. He was a very calm presence, and I felt very accepted by him. So it was nice to have that, but the whole thing felt like a lot of unspoken words and a lot of things that I had to go and figure out what they meant. Does that make sense?
That sounds like much ado about nothing to me. That just, I really, really, and like I mean that to the extent of, how can I say this? So, like, people's reactions to things when we're super vulnerable and transparent to them makes a huge impact on the person who's doing the sharing.
Right.
Okay, so, and I didn't learn this, until like later in life myself. But when you said that to them, even though it's presented as concern about you, to me, it's selfish in nature because ultimately it's also about their comfort level too. And
Right.
ultimately it's about their perspective and the way they see things, at the end of the day.
Right.
And of course, as you and I both know, your sexuality should never be a topic of discussion at the kitchen table in the first damn place.
Right. I
And
agree.
so, and, I just, it's like when I got arrested the first time and one of my siblings, they called me, or maybe I called them or whatever. And I think they called me and then they were crying and it was this whole thing. And it was like, oh my God, you're going to get to jail. You're going to overdose. It was like I had like got caught with like an 8 ball of crystal meth in my underwear. And so they were like, oh my God, you're going to get to jail and you're going to die. And it was like all of this chaotic drama. And okay. So on the one hand, you could say this person was really concerned about me. But on the other hand, that person's projecting upon me all of their fears due to other things they've been exposed to.
Right.
Recently, they've been made to feel uncomfortable over something that's going on in my life,
Right. Yep.
and I'm not
I'm
okay
with you.
with people do that. So how
Yeah.
I would like it to go, if I get arrested, be like, "Oh, hey, so sorry that happened. How can what can I do for you?"
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you on this completely because this is what all of my work boils down to is just can we all just live and let live? Like he made that choice. That's on him. You know, I, this is, who I am. And it's not a reflection of anyone except this is who I am. So just allowing each other to actually just live our lives. It's kind of the heart of why I've written the things I've written and why I've done the work that I've done, because that's ultimately what I would love for people to see people do with each other is to just be there for people, accept people where they are, and accept yourself in the process. And I mean, it's really simple, but we just put so much shit on each other so quickly with judgment and fears or whatever it may be.
Mm.
You know, it's the human thing to do, I suppose.
Well, that's called oppression, in many different forms, and we're
Yeah.
just God calls us to get away from
Yeah.
I won't go down that tangent, but
No, you can if you want to.
I'm just gonna sum it up and say there's a website that I've become obsessed with lately, and let me find it, overviewbible.com. There's a guy, and I hope to get him on my show one day, who does these really colorful videos. I kind of feel like I'm back in kindergarten, and I'm really stoked about that because, Jesus taught with simplicity.
Yeah,
He wasn't over the top. And I love the way this grown man has taken the complexities of the Bible, which is many different books, many different authors over many
right.
centuries, packed into one and simplified it into colorful charts.
I love it.
And so, today I was looking at like oppression, and he was explaining how God is against oppression, and that, how the whole breakaway from like, the Tower of Babel, and how they became Babylon, who ended up being the oppressors of like the whole earth as it was known at the time, and how Israel was called away from that because God is against oppression, and the laws that he gave them were so that they wouldn't become like oppressive people. And then once they rebelled and became like oppressive people, and they got their pee spanked, and everything like that, then he washed the whole world away. And then, the whole thing is, and then Jesus comes along, this Jewish guy preaching against oppression, and he was talking about how people with power and money need more oppression to stay in power and money,
Absolutely.
and how God is against that. And then it creates a whole like dynamic. And so
Yep.
God is anti-oppression, and the devil and all that is evil is for oppression. But it gets conflated because you look at how wealth and power looks, and because it looks cute, you don't see it for the oppressive evil that it is. And so
Right. Cool. No, thank you for all of that. But it's true. I mean, we do oppress others with just our opinions, and how we think they should be living their life. And that has an impact.
it has an impact on people. And one line that you wrote, you said that your brother's thoughts about you meant just as much to you as your parents did.
Mm,
And when you left your parents' house that day, you felt raw, you felt responsible for this major shift in everyone's life.
right.
And so this to me is speaking of that oppression.
Exactly. Yeah.
I, I need you to help me understand. And what I think it is because maybe you had a good relationship, maybe, and these people were important to you. You know, help me understand why you felt responsible for the changes that you being yourself was gonna make in people.
'Cause it was gonna make them it made them uncomfortable, and I w that was they were gonna be faced with people who were gonna they were gonna have to decide of whether they were gonna have to stand up for me or not. They were gonna be faced with people in the community that were gonna say, "Hey, I heard Megan's gay." They were gonna say terrible things, and they were gonna have to make their stance on where they were with it, and and I was really close to my family, and I felt really close to my family before coming out. And it just brought all of who I was to a head. It was like, okay, you guys have no idea who I am, and here you go. Like here I am changing spiritually. Here I am changing my sexuality. Here I am changing my path. And at the time, it just felt like a big weight and a big responsibility, and that I was the one that was gonna have to carry it. It's like my brother said, you need to leave Mississippi." It was like, "Okay, apparently I've gotta do the work here." I didn't feel like anyone was like, "You got this, Megan. I'm behind you. I'm gonna stand up for you." I didn't have that. I didn't have anyone cheerleading me on and saying it's gonna be okay, giving me a hug and, saying, "This is how you're gonna get through this, or we're gonna walk with you." It just felt like it was my fault, that things were gonna be hard for everyone.
Who outed you, and how did it happen?
You know what? I don't even know how it happened. I just know that I started getting phone calls. I don't know who it came from. I just know I started getting phone calls one day from everyone saying, "Oh, you're a hypocrite. Oh, you're gonna go to hell. quoting Bible verses to me, meeting me in the chapel to talk to me, asking me, "Hey, do you even know who God is anymore?" Like, it was phone call after phone call after phone call all in one day.
Okay, well, so for someone to have known this, beside was there anyone else that you had told besides your older brother? Were you going to like some
Well, I had a girlfriend, and there were a few of our teammates. I played basketball and softball at Mississippi State, and there were some teammates that knew, but they knew not to tell anyone. But there was, it just people started connecting the dots. I had been with her for almost a year, and so
either that or you had a damn Judas?
who knows? I'm sure it was a combination of many people.
Damn. You know, as we snitches get stitches and end up in ditches, bitches. Keep your mouth shut.
Well, and I was one of the leaders of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, like I was the person that did all the Bible studies. So people viewed me as like the spiritual leader in some ways. And so it was like wrecking their belief system in their lives.
Oh my fucking god. Okay, so this mirrors to me what happened when I was in volunteer leadership at Lakewood Church, and then my whole gay scandal hit and everything, and I got plucked from the fold, from under Joel Osteen, and they found out about
What?
this was back during MySpace. So I was at Liquid at least 10, 15 hours a week. I was the worship leader for the Wednesday night kids ministry. I was a volunteer supervisor over like 200 kids and about 20 teachers. I taught my own group of third grade boys. I was in charge of the check-in process too on Wednesday night, handling all disputes in between teachers, parents, etc. On the weekend, I sang in that huge, massive ass Lakewood Church adult choir and
Wow.
everything like that. And I applied for a job, and then they did a social media check and found out that I was like bisexual and hanging out in the gay district of Houston, which is Montrose. Then I had a rather scantily clad photo, as my cover page. I was in my 20s and in really good shape. I don't judge anybody for being a little vain during those days. Go for it, honey. Work it while you can, bitch. And so, and they called me in the office and they were like, we're leading up to this. They did underhand shit. Like they were asking me if I had a girlfriend and saying the parents were complaining about my mannerisms and stuff like that. Yes, it was at Lakewood Church. And so
Wow.
when the MySpace scandal happened, they were like, "Oh, hell no. You can't be hanging out with those gay people. They use negative pronouns with us." Like they said pronouns in a negative way. They were like, "You can't be doing that with them hanging out over there with those people." You know? And they like that out like they were like, "You're fired from all areas of volunteering, whether it has anything to do with children or not." Basically saying that you're a pedophile, that I'm a pedophile because I'm not straight. And so yeah, this is like reminding me of that. I was in the leadership and they're like, "How could you? How could you? How could you have your own private life?" You know?
So what happened? Did you end up staying or leaving, or they kicked you out, or?
Oh, I was kicked out. Now they did offer me a conversion therapy package.
Of course.
They they were like, in these churches and these mega churches, they're not gonna do like the old Exodus movement and be like, "We want to convert you." They're gonna be like coursework, classes, counseling session, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were like, "Here, we pre-selected these books for you. If you read these and become ungay, then you can work your way back into our graces. In the meantime, we can make you a greeter or an usher, but nothing besides that." As if
Wow.
a greeter or an usher is beneath singing in the choir. I realize the choir makes you a lot of money and everything like that, but still, that very offer was demeaning the greeters and ushers.
Well, you actually get to interact with more people and have more influence, so I don't understand that.
There there's not much that I can make sense out of churches when I sit down and think of them.
Right.
Fellowship of Christian Athletes can go fuck themselves too, because they just like many of these religious organizations have these anti-LGBTQIA policies and they run around behind the scenes. I mean, the way they talk to you in the book, I mean, but, like you were saying, like, you go to hell, and all of this, they weren't in the list. They never asked you,
"Are you okay?"
"Are you okay? Tell us your perspective. How is it?"
No. Yeah. They didn't wanna hear what I had to say, and that's what was most hurtful. It's like, I just wanna tell you my experience, but they wouldn't listen to a word I had to say, and that's what hurt the most.
That was the same goddamn thing they did to me at Lakeway. There was none of it wasn't a two-way conversation.
Mm,
It was me being preached at. The decision was already made. The judgment was already there.
yeah,
Done.
yeah,
And it's such a mind fuck because you spent so much time around these people and you think the day would never come. And you think they've got your back and you find out that that is conditional love that they've had for you this whole
I
time.
know.
I couldn't
Yeah,
handle it.
I know, and it is, I've been thinking about this a lot lately too, it's like, you're hurting me, but how is me being gay actually hurting you? Besides just making you think about your faith a little bit differently or pushing you to love in a different way, like when we're saying things to people, you know, or people are doing things to us, is it actually hurting you? Their response to me was hurting me, but me being gay wasn't actually hurting them when it came down to it. And so that helps me decipher a little bit the difference between, you know, what's right in the end.
Right. Quantifiable damages. And that same logic can be applied to this whole battle against women and abortion. A woman getting an abortion doesn't hurt the conservative Republican, but she's going to have to go through a very painful pregnancy, with this
Yeah.
child and everything just to spare your feelings.
Yeah.
I wrote a blog on my website called the common sense of the 10 commandments. And I break down in it how when God gave us, rules and stuff like that, that there's a practical reason. Like he's trying to prevent quantifiable damages. It's not just
Yeah.
rules for the sake of rules.
Yeah.
And, I talk about how if you want to sue someone, you can't go to court and be like, I want to sue Karen because she has a fucked up backyard and it makes me uncomfortable. Now if Karen has a fucked up backyard and the roaches and the critters are coming over into your yard,
Yep.
now you have a case because you have quantifiable damages, but
Right.
you'd be like, "Oh, I hate her fucking bob haircut, it really offends me." You can't do that. So
Yeah. No, I really want to write a book on this because I feel like if people could think about it from that perspective and think about their choices and their feelings and their opinions and actually put them into context and think about the other person and if they're hurting them or if they're being hurt in return, I just the need for control and the need to be able to have our hands on how things are supposed to look or how things are supposed to be. It's so damaging. Like there's no life is a mystery and that's the way it should always be. It's just a mystery. But people don't they like to think they know how things are supposed to be and what they're supposed to look like.
Mhm, mhm. The mind is a deep well. I learned this in my study of hypnotherapy because I'm also a trained hypnotist also. It's so deep that it's unsearchable, and for all we know about it, we don't really know all that much.
Exactly.
And the same thing goes for the spirit world,
Can you
even to
there's so much we don't know.
or the universe. For those of you who like to worship the universe and whatever, we just received a new image today.
Yeah.
Faces.
I saw that.
And I thought, oh my god, like so much beauty and variety out there, and yet we're conservatives want to make it just one way here on the earth.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have I ever write a book addressing these hard headed ass people because I'm more like, everyone's got their calling. That's the loving side of you. You know, I'm more like, let's burn these fuckers to the ground.
Yeah.
you know, so then let's talk about your outreach then, with your sweet, big hearted, loving self. You do you do LGBTQIA advocacy in the great state of Mississippi with pastors. When you told me this, I damn near fell out of my chair because just the Like, just to imagine somebody going to talk to somebody who know and you know that they think that there's something wrong with you, and you're willingly going to sit in front of them. Why? What are you doing? Like, what progress have you seen?
That's a good question. Well, there's been a multitude of I mean, there's a multitude of stories there that I could go into. First, I think for me, initially, it was about wanting to be comfortable enough in my own skin that when I sat across from someone who vehemently disagreed with who I was, and that I could still feel okay when I left. So for me, in some ways, it was a little bit of a personal challenge that I wanted to be so comfortable that someone like that would not affect how I felt about myself.
Okay.
And so for me, there's a little bit of that, and also a need to represent my community and to help people understand our stories and our experience when we're treated like we don't matter. And I wanted to do it for those two reasons. And so when, like marriage rights and other rights were kind of starting to change 2012, 2013, all the way up until marriage equality was passed. There was this big span of years where I was either on the news with Baptist pastors having a debate or on stage on campuses in Mississippi on National Coming Out Day or whatever, telling my story. There was just this whole I was on Mississippi Public Radio. They were very interested in my story, and so it was just very much in the Mississippi world being that voice because everyone else around me was too scared. They were afraid they were gonna lose their jobs. They were afraid they're gonna lose their loved ones. They didn't wanna be outed yet. A lot of people were still in the closet, and so I felt this need for myself to get over my own fears, and I felt this need for my community to help them be understood. And I didn't wanna do it from a place of anger because I don't I'm not super comfortable with anger. And I also found that anger didn't get me anywhere in conversations. It just left us feeling like we hadn't accomplished anything, and then I would walk away feeling bad about myself. So I approached all these conversations from a place of just being vulnerable about my experience of coming out. And so the stories you've read in that book are stories that I would share with pastors or priests or with, spiritual leaders in the community who wanted to have conversations with me. And I spoke from that place rather than saying, hey, you need to change the way you think and feel about this or pointing the finger and blaming because I wanted to feel empowered afterward. And I always felt empowered afterwards because I was honest about my experience and I wanted them to see me as a human and not as a label. And that's the only way I knew how to do it and walk away feeling like I represented myself, and I also gave them something to think about that I'm a human being and I have feelings. I'm not just a gay person. I'm more than that. And I wanted to get underneath that way, and that's what opened doors for conversations. That's when they started telling me their stories. That's when they started asking me eventually, like, "How can I help? What can we do?" And this was an evolution over, many years that this happened, but that's how I decided to approach it and how I found it to be fulfilling for me. And I know everybody's different, but that's the route I've taken.
Well, we can agree on one thing is that, we it's not up for us to try to change their minds.
Right.
We definitely
Exactly. But we can come to a place where we can understand each other. And I didn't want it, and I truly did not want to change someone's mind. I wanted them to see that I was more than a label. 'Cause that's all I had been, or that's all I felt like I had been, and sometimes I still feel that way. It's like, "Oh, she's gay, and then she's this." But if I'm not sharing my experiences, how will they ever know that I'm not more than that? So, I've just found over the years it's been the best approach for me.
that is very humble of you, and we've all got our part to play. strictly speaking, it is incumbent upon each of us to grow for ourselves, to do the things that we need to grow. So if they weren't so arrogant as to think they already knew everything about you, then people like us,
Yeah.
they would be more open minded. They would go to a pride meeting, a pride
Exactly.
convention, parents, friends of lesbians and gays, PFLAG, like they would go to educational things. They would reach out and learn. But before they would do that, they would have to be willing to take a second look at things. They would have to be open minded and actually interested in
Absolutely.
all
Yeah.
people rather than to jumping to conclusions.
Yeah.
So I think it's very big of you, very, very, and I commend you and I respect the fuck out of you for reaching across the aisle. I feel like this is a goddamn Democratic Republican situation. You're
I
calling
mean
across the aisle.
we gotta do something, right? Like, the way we've done it isn't working. We're no more connected than we were 10 years ago. And, I feel very connected to my community now, I think because of all these experiences and conversations that have happened. I feel very supported by my community now, but it was a long, hard road for me to just constantly just throw it out there. Like, it was hard and painful, and I risked a lot every time I did it. But now that I'm at the place where I am in my life where I don't give a fuck about what people think, to me, it was completely worth how I approached it.
I'm going to ask you about exactly how you got to the point of giving so much of a fuck to not giving a fuck. That's my next question for you. Because I need to bring this all to like a nexus point. Because I want to see how we go from Megan, the outed girl, chaos and drama, identity wrapped up in her family's opinions, to independent, married to a woman with a kid, and saying "fuck you all." But if you would like to know more, I'm here for you. You know, yeah. I don't know how we get, what how we got there. But I wanted to mention that this dream that I had that, and I don't, and then, so I'm a gifted dreamer. I started dreaming around the age of 4 or 5. My dreams come true. That is like one of the greatest gifts that I have. It just came to me that way. And I dream
Yeah,
all the
I
time.
love that.
And so, look, and I love God for it. I love to sleep and to see what he's gonna say to me every night. It's
Yeah,
a
that's
beautiful,
awesome.
beautiful thing to look forward to. So in this dream, I it's like I heard a song being sung by conservative people who are like your Republicans and your people like that, and think that they know what's wrong with other people, who tend to want to persecute people, like Saul did before he became Paul. He felt like his way of looking at things was the only way it should be looked at, and if you didn't, then he was going to try to find a way to force you because you were the demon. He would
Right.
recognize you.
Mhm.
It's like these people were singing a song, and like you're saying, it's like, they had a change of heart, and in this song, it's like they were asking what could they have done differently, or what kind of way could they do it better? It's like God was turning them around.
Mhm.
I don't this is something that really, really shocked me, is sometimes God will do, because I don't go about the business of praying to God like for Republican,
Right.
or hateful people to change, because that's not my ministry. My ministry is to deal with the people they have hurt. That is who I'm called to. I don't ask him to change the hearts of cold hearted ass mega church leaders or church leaders, no matter the size. That's not who I'm called to. So when this dream came to me, I was just like in awe. Sometimes God will do this to me. He will show me something that's completely like has nothing to do with like my vein of thinking or the direction that I'm going in, but it stops and it commands my attention because he's God and he can do what he wants, and I'm happy to be submissive to him. And so I wonder if this dream, you know, is speaking to me something about the work that you're doing, because this came to me shortly before I met you, or
Yeah.
before I had my first conversation with you.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's foretelling something to come. Do you feel on a grander scale, a shift happening or more people who have not been open-minded becoming more open-minded, globally speaking?
I mean, I think our leadership doesn't reflect the the true essence of people, and I've seen that, and the reason I say that is because, I've lived in the more rural parts of Mississippi too, and I've immersed myself here in Starkville, and I've immersed myself in different communities around here in Columbus and West Point, which are smaller towns, a little bit more conservative, a little bit less diverse, and every time we've put ourselves in a new pocket and we've been open about who we are, talking about my wife and I and my family, people always meet us in the middle. And it always surprises me because of my experience of coming out and where I've come from and, the things that I've gone through. But in the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've seen a major shift in perspective towards my family. And that's all I can speak to, right? Like I can't speak to anything else. I just know that at the core and the majority of people in the world, I think are really good. I really do. And I truly believe that. And that our representation, our corporate, our corporate climate, our leadership, politics, all of that is of a different essence. And they don't necessarily represent everyone. So that's why I just really try to focus on like who's in front of me right now. And are they loving towards me and my family? And am I loving towards them? And and am I inspired by their presence in my life? And if I can inspire and be inspired with the people who are in my life, to me, I feel like that's what I can focus on and that's all I can do. And so that's why I focus so much on my own community because it's really the only thing that matters to me is my family, those relationships, my close friends, and the people I'm directly affecting. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I do feel like that media and social media plays a huge part in making things seem so much worse than they really truly are. And we get into, and once you get into that mindset of fear, it's so easy to spiral down into it yourself and you forget to act from love and you're acting from fear instead. And we limit ourselves because of that. But I think the media and social media plays a huge part in why we feel like things are so terrible right now.
Yeah, you answered my question. And that's why I'm excited how you're gonna help me grow because I have so many things to grow. With me, when
I
I'm
do too.
when I'm around people who I know don't like non-straight people, it's bad energy. I think it's damaging and I don't feel safe. And so that's why I'm so quick to get away from it. And so that's why I was so intrigued to see how you can, tolerate it. But again, you're not around them all day. You
I'm
probably,
not immersing myself in that. No,
so
no.
so so then as promised, my other question for you would be like how you made the transition. And the key a key line from the the book that I like that I think kind of sums up of how a lot of people feel when they're trying to come out or they're unsure. You said that
Yeah.
this is a kind of unworthiness that seeps into your decision making by masking what isn't good for you with something that appears to be the missing piece.
Mm.
So how did you go from that to where you are now?
Yeah, this the whole feeling of not feeling like you're enough and you're not whole and you're not worthy of God's love. I mean, the church teaches you that, or at least the church I grew up in is like, you're a sinner, you're not worthy of God's love, we're not enough. And so you have those messages playing a part, but then you're also, an LGBTQ plus person and you're not enough in the eyes of the law. You're not enough in the eyes of your family or your of society. And so there's a lot against you. And for me, the journey has been about doing what I want to do and following my heart. And whether it comes down to my work, the balance in my life, the person I chose to marry, the family that I always wanted. Like, I have just gone after everything I've wanted. And even, like relationships with my family members, it's been counseling, it's been hard conversations. Like, this hasn't been all butterflies and rainbows. It's been ugly and hard. And I've cried a lot over the years, and I've been in therapy and I've been through coaching, and, I've screwed up my career. And, it's just been a tumultuous thing. But I finally got to this point when I decided to get married, and then we decided to have a child and have the family I wanted, and, live where we wanted to live and do the careers that we wanted to do. It's like, if you just say yes to the things that you want and what your heart wants, everything else works itself out. And and I truly believe that. And I feel like that's been a big part of it. And telling my story over the years is a big part of my healing process. Facing those harder conversations with, my community and pastors and city council or whoever it's been, that has been a part of those baby steps for me and has helped me kind of get to this place where I actually like myself and I love myself and I'm good. Like, I don't need anything else in my life besides what I have.
So that's very, very beautiful. Thank you for that breakdown. So if someone doesn't have a platform though, and speaking is healing, what would you say to like somebody in a small country town
Yeah.
with who just happened to stumbles across this episode in the year of struggling with coming out? Or maybe they did come out and now they feel abandoned and they've been rejected.
Yeah. Well, I'd started with my journal, like tell your stories there. Then went into counseling and I told my stories there. And then I found a group of friends that I knew would accept me and I told my stories there. I went to safe spaces, and I think you have to start in safe spaces. You can't go to your church that is going to reject you and tell your story there until you're good enough to handle that shit. Like, you got to start small, and you got to start in those spaces where you're going to be loved and accepted.
And as evil as social media is, I think if it's used in the right way, that sort of you can reach out and connect to positive groups if that's what you're.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, or reach out to me or reach out to you, like, there's so many more resources out there than people realize. And when you're feeling victimized and you're feeling stuck, it's hard to see possibilities. But there's so much out there and there's so many good people out there who will help.
Right? You don't wanna let your mindset become victim to the circumstances.
Right. Bringing it back, bringing it back.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we pretty much covered it for today. What is there anything, any final words you'd like to say or anything you wanna talk about that we didn't? The floor is yours.
No, I thank you for this discussion and just the realness. And, those were really hard questions and really good questions. And it pushed me. So I'm very appreciative.
Blessings be upon you, my sister. Her name is Meagan O'Nan.
Sound French.
You have the apostrophe and everything in it.
That's true.
meaganonan.com. Of course, we'll go in the showy notes, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, her social media. We'll also go in the showy notes. And on her website, you'll be able to find her books and everything like that. Till next time, all my beautiful souls, all my beautiful, colorful people out there in all the universe, be diverse, be different, and don't dare be like anybody else.
Amen.
Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. Feel free to reach out to me directly at devannon@sexdrugsandjesus.com and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devannon. It's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.